vocabulary, then you think, he knows what he's talking about because I didn't understand anything. That's complete nonsense. So, anyway.
Same thing with science.
Huh?
That's the same thing with science.
Oh, science, yeah.
It's all mumbo jumbo, and people just get, so enamored by the mumbo jumbo that this must be true.
Exactly.
If you ask a layman, they have no clue what any scientific theory actually.
You don't understand even half the words they use. They have their own specialized language.
That's the same nonsense.
Yeah.
And it starts from in the schools they teach us these things different things. So when somebody talks about those things, so we are connected a little bit, and the rest we don't understand. So we think that the rest which we have not understood might be correct.
Yes. No, not might be. Is correct. See, this specialized language is what throws people off. They never use simple language. They always have their own lingo. And then by the time, you hear all these big words, you give up. You just think, oh, he must know what he's talking about, because he was able to use all these words that you don't understand.
Talking about that verse in Upanishad, which says we should want to understand nations.
Nescience. Nescience. No one understands the word nescience, by the way. Nobody understands it. It means ignorance, right? Yeah.
There's a quote from Bhaktivinoda Thakur in one of his writings, which says something to the effect that, paraphrasing, that along with strong faith in Guru, Sadhu and Shastra, unless one has a very keen understanding of the working of material energy, it is almost impossible to get out of the traffic.
Yes.
So it's very, and when it says he's not talking about obviously the modern scientific understanding of any science, but how the scriptures describe how the material energy is working, the karma, the scientific philosophy. Unless one understands it, he makes that statement and see if you can find it. It's very almost impossible to get out.
No, I gave the example yesterday. A little child, let's say a baby, is playing and a snake comes. And baby is not afraid of the snake, doesn't know what a snake is. He thinks it's something maybe that he can eat, or it's a toy or something. So the baby doesn't have any fear, right? Because it doesn't understand. Well, of course, the parents, they see the snake near the baby, they freak out and they start screaming and try and save the baby. But the baby doesn't have, and even the baby, when the baby passes a stool, if it doesn't have a diaper on, it'll play with the stool. Maybe it'll even eat it. They have to be taught not to play with it, not to eat it, and it's unclean and so forth. So unless we understand how the material nature is working, we're like that baby, just playing with the snake. You get bit and you die. From his kingdom, the personality of Godhead sends his bona fide servants to propagate this message by which one can return to God. And sometimes the Lord comes himself to do this work. Since all living beings are his beloved sons, his parts and parcels, God is sorrier than we ourselves to see the sufferings we are constantly undergoing in this material condition. God is sorrier than we are for our sufferings. That's why he sends great devotees, or he comes himself. That's why he speaks Bhagavad Gita. That's why his devotees spoke Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. They're sorrier than we are that we're suffering. The miseries of this material world serve to indirectly remind us of our incompatibility with dead matter. Why does it say incorrectly? Indirectly. Indirectly.
Remind us of our incompatibility with that matter.
Because it's indirectly, I think it's in the sense that the soul always wants to be happy, but the fact that he cannot find happiness over here, should logically imply that he does not belong over here. That what he's looking for should be available somewhere else. just like we are hungry, that means that and we find there is something available to satisfy our hunger, right? So there should be means to satisfy the need. The fact that you cannot satisfy your need in this realm, it means we really don't belong to us. It belong here, we belong somewhere else. So that's central in the.
Yeah, well, you always, it's possible to understand something that you have no experience of by beginning with the known. You begin with the known and try to understand the unknown. So, what do we know about the known? The known, we know that if you're driving down the road at a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit with the signs posted, and you're going 65, a policeman stops you and he says, I traced you at 65, but the sign says 35. Therefore, you're going to get a $500 ticket. He said, oh, but officer, it was a mistake. Oh? What was the mistake? I got these new shoes, and they're really shiny and soft, very. There's no roughness on the bottom, and my foot slipped when I put it on the gas pedal, and that's why I was going 65. I was only going 35 before, but because of the new shoes, I ended up 65 for just a short stretch, and you just happened to be there at that stretch. He said, well, that's a really good explanation. I'll let you explain that to the judge. So, ignorance is no excuse. Your shoes are not an excuse, right? You do something wrong, you suffer. You get a ticket or whatever. So now, we can learn that when we do something wrong, there's usually suffering that follows. Now, I can't remember doing anything wrong, so why am I suffering? Because we must have forgotten what we did wrong. Because we forget all the time. I can't even remember what I ate yesterday. So how am I going to remember something I did in a previous lifetime? So these are actually, that's why he says here, the miseries, what you said is correct. What you said is correct. The miseries of this material world serve to indirectly remind us of our incompatibility with dead matter. Intelligent living entities generally take note of these reminders and engage themselves in a culture of vidya, or transcendental knowledge. Human life is the best opportunity for the culture of spiritual knowledge, and a human being who does not take advantage of this opportunity is called a naradama, the lowest of human beings. Nara means human, and adama means lowest. Why? Because they're educated, they're logical, they have rational sense, but they use all that equipment, let's say, or all that good baggage for advancing sense gratification, and not for advancing a culture of transcendental knowledge by which they can become liberated from the cycle of birth and death. The path of avidya, or advancement of material knowledge for sense gratification, is the path of repeated birth and death. As he exists spiritually, the living entity has no birth or death. Birth and death apply to the outward covering of the spirit's soul, the body. Death is compared to the taking off, and birth to the putting on of outward garments. Foolish human beings who are grossly absorbed in the culture of avidya, nescience, do not mind this cruel process. Enamored with the beauty of the illusory energy, they undergo the same miseries repeatedly and do not learn any lessons from the laws of nature. See, in other words, people think that birth, death, and old age and disease are normal. It's just part of life. You just have to accept it. No. Anyone who has half a brain knows that I don't want these things. They're being forced on me. And why are they being forced on me? I must have done something wrong, because they're suffering. Birth is suffering, old age is suffering, death is suffering, sickness is suffering. I don't want any of this stuff. Therefore, it's being forced on me, just like the policeman is forcing a ticket on me, even though I gave him a good, credible explanation, So, therefore, we see that, we're being forced to suffer because we must have done something wrong in the past. Because whenever we do something wrong in the present, we get suffering. Therefore, I must have done something in the past, but I can't remember it. Therefore, I got to get some help. Yeah.
So one question I have, are we...
Microphone.
So, I have one question. So, basically, we are getting punished here
Yes.
for the problems, the wrong things what we have done.
That we can't remember.
We can't remember. So, like here we read just now, God is sorrier
Than
we ourselves to see the sufferings we are constantly undergoing in this material condition.
Yes.
So, like we compare generally to understand God, we say that parents and child relationship we take.
Yes.
So when the parents see a child in that state, they try to bring that child out of that one.
Yeah.
Punishment.
Yeah.
So
therefore, Krishna has done many things to help us get out.
Okay.
One, he established the karma cycle. The karma cycle, which we explained yesterday a little bit. The karma cycle is, for everything you do, there's a reaction. You do good things, you get good reaction. You do bad things, you get a bad reaction. However, we don't understand, but if you come to the classes and read Bhagavad Gita, you understand. Good and bad reactions are all bad.
yeah.
But they keep us in the material world. Okay? That's the karma cycle. So Krishna established it like that. Secondly, he spoke Bhagavad Gita. Third, he came to speak it, he came himself to speak it. And he came as Lord Chaitanya and started this Harinam Sankirtan movement. And he sends Prabhupada and other great saints, the Alvars, Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, all these people, to try and teach us that, hey, we've made a big mistake. There's no real happiness in the material world. It's an illusory happiness because you can't hold on to it. There's only sustainable happiness when you engage in spiritual life. And then he explains elaborately how to become free of this conditioning and entanglement.
So basically, God is looking an effort from us. But he has the power to just pull it out like us. Like he can pull it out, us.
Wait, let's like this.
So why he's not doing that way?
Let me give you an example. This is an example Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave. One man accidentally fell down a well.
Fell down, right?
A well,
Well,
right? How do you say well in Hindi?
Kua.
Kua?
Kua.
Kua. And you come and say, I'll save your life. And you throw a rope down. He said, grab the rope, I pull you to safety. And he said, no, you come down here and hand me the rope. Would you do it?
Yeah, I will do the first one.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No, you tell him, no, just grab the rope, hold on to it, I'll pull you to safety. And he's saying, no, you come down and hand it to me. Well, wait a minute. It's only you up there, there's nobody else up there, right? If you go down and hand it to him, then you're both in the same situation. Even if you tie the rope to something before you go down, it's an extremely dangerous situation. You see? Now, let's say he was unconscious, that's different. Then you might attempt to go down and pull him up, although it'd be extremely difficult. So the minimum requirement to save that man is he just has to grab the rope. Or you might throw the rope down with a loop on it. And you say, just, put it over your head and put it around your waist and then tighten it and I'll pull you up. But he says, no, you come down and hand it to me. Otherwise, so you're not going to do that.
Other side is a God.
let me say something. So, there was a similar discussion with Bhaktiyanand Tirth Maharaj, and he gave a nice answer. He says is that you saying God just pick you up and transform you to the spiritual world because He's capable of doing that. Yes, but the thing is, you would be, unless one has gone through the purification, you'll be incompatible in the spiritual world, because if someone's attached to basketball, football, there is no basketball, football in the spiritual world, you'll be bored. You won't be able to, you won't like being there. So one has to go through that spiritual transformation and demonstrate the liking that, I am compatible to stay, right, in that spiritual realm. Otherwise, that's the original reason why you came down. So unless you prove yourself that you are, show that you're...
That is a type of a disease. I'm lacking something in the material world, and that can be also be removed by Him.
No, the free will is something that's always, otherwise you would be all robots, right? It's by our free will that we
Now
came over here.
look, God helps those that help themselves. If you don't make any effort, because Krishna says, Ye yatamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham mamavart manavartante manusya partha sarvasa. As someone surrenders unto me, to the degree or the percentage that they surrender unto me, I proportionately reveal myself to them. So if you do absolutely nothing, just like that guy at the bottom of the well, you come down here, you hand it to me, then I'll let you save me. No. You have to make some effort. You don't make any effort, and that effort means surrendering somewhat to God, to Krishna. If you don't make any effort at all, then you get nothing. Just like if somebody comes up to you in the street and says, hey, Sanjay, give me $1,000. Somebody you don't know. You say, how do you know my name? It says, some guy over there told me. And you say, well, who are you? You say, I'm Billy Brown. You say, okay, but why should I give you any money? You say, because you got some money and I need the money. You God, and I'm your devotee, man. You give me some money. You say, wait a minute. I don't know who you are. What are you going to do with the money anyway? Well, I'm going to buy some wine. I'm going to buy some hot dogs. And you say, well, I'm not going to give you any money. So why not? You got money. You God. You got money. So I'm not giving you one penny. You go get a job. Like me. You earn your own money. Yeah? Would you give that guy $1,000? Would you give him $1? No. Okay. So now you're God, and you won't give that guy anything because, he doesn't deserve it. He's not doing anything to deserve it. And not only that, he's going to go and waste the money on nonsense. You see? And he'll come back a month later and ask you for another $1,000. So now you understand about God. By understanding yourself, you can understand something about God. Right? Okay. The activities of material senses are perverted reflections of the activities of the original spiritual senses. In his diseased condition, the spirit soul engages in material activities under the material covering. Real sense enjoyment is possible only when the disease of materialism is removed. In our pure spiritual form, free from all material contamination, real enjoyment of senses is possible. So yesterday we explained the difference between false sense gratification and real sense gratification. So Hari, you were here, right? What's the difference?
Gross sense gratification is when you're doing something for yourself and what was that one?
And what?
What was the other sense gratification?
Real sense gratification, or appropriate sense gratification.
We use our senses to do something for Krishna.
To please Krishna's sense. And then Krishna is so kind, he offers us back as prasadam what we offered to him, right? And then when we accept the prasadam, our senses are satisfied, right? Do you feel any pleasure when you eat prasadam? Yeah. So there's appropriate sense gratification and inappropriate. Just like if you see a nice flower and you say, oh, Krishna should have this flower. You don't say, oh man, it smells really good, forget about Krishna. I'll just smell the flower myself. No. It's, oh, Krishna will like this. So you take the flower, offer it to Krishna, and Krishna will, almost all the time, offers it back to you. So then when you smell the flower offered to Krishna, just like the 4 Kumaras became pure devotees by smelling the odor of tulsi leaves that were on the feet of Lord Vishnu. That convinced them. They were Mayavadis before that, but then they became pure devotees just by smelling this. So it pleases your senses, but it's an appropriate way. Okay. So then we quoted some other verses, and then the real subject yesterday was the homework from the previous week, how to attain liberation from the cycle of birth and death, right? And we quoted this verse, Advaita sarvabhutanam maitra karuna evacha nirmamo nirhankara samadukha sukham shami santusta satatam yogi yata atma dhritanishchaya. I'm sorry. Yetu sarvani karamani maya sanyasya matpara ananyanaiva yogena mritya mam dhyayantu upasate te samaham samudartam Mrityu samsara sagarat, bhavami nachirat partha, maya avesita chetasam. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me, without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Prita, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So in the purport, we're not going to read the whole purport, it explains that going back to God is actually very easy. It's not hard at all. And he says it several times in the purport. And one thing we learn from the purport is that Krishna is attracted to us, but we're not really attracted to Krishna. Therefore, Krishna has made the process to go back to Godhead very easy, knowing that we have an aversion to it. We want to stay in the material world out of ignorance. Ignorance is so powerful, we want to suffer. And we glorify suffering. Glorify. Just like there's a poem by a famous English poet named Coleridge. He says, I eat hot chilies so that when I drink cold wine, it feels really good.
What is it?
I eat hot chilies so when I drink cold wine, it feels really good. Right. In other words, for him to enjoy, there has to be duality. But that's not enjoyment. That's not positive enjoyment. Just like, I purposely buy shoes too small for my feet. So after I walk all day and my feet are really hurting, when I come home and I take off my shoe, it feels really good. Now, does that make sense? That's not real happiness. It's just the relief of suffering that he's calling happiness. And same with Coleridge. Now, all these guys are supposed to be big poets, big thinkers, big philosophers. Actually, they're big stinkers and big philosophers. So here Prabhupada is saying that the devotee does not desire any achievement other than pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His life's mission is to please Krishna, and he can sacrifice everything for Krishna's satisfaction, just as Arjuna did in the Battle of Kurukshetra. The process is very simple. One can devote himself to his occupation and engage at the same time in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Such transcendental chanting attracts the devotee to the personality of Godhead. Now, what's strange about the construction of this sentence? What would it normally be in normal English? Such transcendental chanting attracts the devotee to the personality of Godhead. What seems strange about that sentence? Okay, Hari, you were here yesterday. That's why we're going over it. From now on, every day, the first session we go over the previous session. And then the next session we'll actually start the new subject. What's strange about this? Okay, no, yes. Yes, exactly right. Normally it would say, such transcendental chanting attracts Krishna to us. But here it says, such transcendental chanting attracts the devotee to the personality of Godhead. Why does it say like? Because Krishna's already attracted to us. We're his praja. He's already attracted. He came himself. He gave the Bhagavad Gita. He sent so many transcendental devotees to teach Bhagavad Gita, right? So he's already attracted to us. What is lacking is our attraction to him. So by chanting Hare Krishna, it awakens our attraction to Krishna. Now, is it something new? No, because we were originally with Krishna. But we forgot. We became attracted. Just like one man went to Costco to buy 2 pounds of bananas. When he came home, he forgot the bananas and he bought a brand new television. Now what happened? How did that happen? He went to Costco to buy 2 pounds of bananas. He had no desire to buy television. Yes, Pranay.
You said this like maybe in the summer, but you said that when you enter right into Costco, there are televisions and they're like all gadgets that are costly, and they're like people waiting around to like tell you like what's there, even though if you don't ask them.
Okay, but where are the bananas?
On the far side.
Yeah, no, on the end of the warehouse. You have to walk a long way to get to the bananas, right? But before you get there, you have to pass through all these areas where there's these very attractive gadgets, cell phones and televisions and so many things, right? So this man walked in, his intention was just to buy bananas, right? But he went home, he brought a brand new television, $2,000 television, big screen and everything. He forgot the bananas. You see? That's our problem. That's a perfect example of why we're in the material world. We became attracted. See, the material world is planned in such a way that if you even come close to it, there's all these attractive things that if you're not attracted to Krishna, you'll be attracted to these things. Right. And Costco uses the same principle as Maya, right? Before you get to the bananas, you got to go through all these sections where there's all these attractive things, that you didn't want to buy, but you end up buying them. And you forget about your original purpose, which was to serve Krishna. Okay? Okay. So the more we chant, the more we become attracted to Krishna. Krishna is always attracted to us, but we are not attracted to him. The Supreme Lord herein, in this verse, Te samaham samudarta mrityu samsara sagarat. He promises that without delay he will deliver a pure devotee thus engaged, meaning in his service, full time, from the ocean of material existence. Those who are advanced in yoga practice can willfully transfer the soul to whatever planet they like by the yoga process, and others take the opportunity in various ways. But as far as the devotee is concerned, it is clearly stated here that the devotee himself, that the Lord himself takes the devotee. The devotee does not need to wait to become very experienced in order to transfer himself to the spiritual sky. You see, that's why he's saying it's easy and it's quick. You don't have to do Kriya Yoga. I explained what Kriya Yoga is. It's very difficult, almost impossible to achieve success. Just a few people can achieve success in Kriya Yoga, such as Durvasa Muni and a few others. But normal people would never even stand a chance to achieve perfection through Kriya Yoga, by which you can take your subtle body and the soul out of the gross body, keep the gross body preserved, and then go anywhere in the universe that you want. So he's saying that others take the opportunity in various ways to transfer the soul to whatever planet they like, but you're always still in the material world. The devotee does not need to wait to become very experienced in order to transfer himself to the spiritual sky. This is practical. This is practiced by Kriya Yogis. So that's what I explained. And then the last paragraph, or last parts of this paragraph, he says, the devotee does not need to endeavor to transfer himself by yoga practice to other planets. Rather, the Supreme Lord, by his great mercy, comes at once, riding on his bird carrier Garuda, and at once delivers the devotee from material existence. So Krishna will come in his own airplane, Garuda, to take you back to Godhead. And we explained yesterday, Garuda can go faster than the speed of light. To get to the end of the universe, you'd have to travel about 40 million light years. A light year is the distance that light traverses in 1 year. And light goes at 173,000 miles a minute, a second. So imagine how far that is, right? Garuda can go from the material world to the spiritual world in a second, whereas it could take you 40 light years, or for whatever that number is, a huge number, and you would never live that long anyway. But when you're sitting on Garuda next to Lord Vishnu, you go back right away. Something that you could never do normally, you're able to do right away. That's why he's saying, Tesamaham Samudarta, you can easily go back to Godhead. And you don't have to be some highly technical yogi doing Kriya Yoga or any of those yogas. By his great mercy, the Lord comes at once, riding on his bird carrier Garuda, and at once delivers the devotee from material existence. Although a man who has fallen in the ocean may struggle very hard and may be very expert in swimming, he cannot save himself. But if someone comes and picks him up from the water, then he is easily rescued. Similarly, the Lord picks up the devotee from this material existence. One simply has to practice the easy process of Krishna consciousness and fully engage himself in devotional service. Any intelligent man should always prefer the process of devotional service to all other paths. Okay, so this was a summary of yesterday's lecture. We won't go over every single point, but you get the idea. Yeah. It's a subtle body, and whatever planet he goes to, he can assume a body of that planet. Just like he could leave one body, he can enter a body also. See, in every planet, the constitution of the bodies is different, because in every planet in the universe, there's a different mix of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Like, for example, the people on the moon, they have subtle bodies. Mind, intelligence, false ego. They don't have gross bodies. Therefore, even if you went there, you wouldn't see them. Just like you can't see your mind. You can't see your intelligence. You can't see your false ego.
So one question here, like to enjoy material world, basically, so people need the soul need a body for that, or they can live without body also. Means the soul can live without body.
In the material world, you always will have a body.
Okay.
But see, you're enjoying the material world in two ways. One way is your gross body, and the other way is with your subtle body. During the day, you enjoy the material. You try and enjoy the material world, although it's more suffering, with your gross body. And at night, you're enjoying with your subtle body in your dreams. You see? But there are planets where people just have subtle body.
And one more question, like, so in Brahma
The subtle
Jyoti.
body is a covering of the soul still.
Okay. So in Brahma Jyoti, what goes there? Like it's only soul goes there, or it's with subtle body it goes there in Brahma Jyoti.
The soul goes there, but there is still some ignorance.
Okay. So we say that they cannot enjoy there, they don't have a bliss there, but
No, they have a negative bliss because there's no suffering. Just like you go to a doctor, a dentist, you say, oh, doctor, my tooth hurts so much, it's terrible. Just do something, I'd never have a toothache again. He said, okay. So he goes and gets a saw, and he saws your neck off. You'll never have another toothache again.
Okay.
Right? Now, do you accept that solution to toothache?
No, but we say
So
that
that's the Mayavadi conception of liberation. They deny their individuality to merge into Brahman. So they get a negative bliss. There's no more toothache. But there's no more individual either. So, but you cannot stop being an individual. So
Yeah.
as soon as there's the slightest desire, immediately they fall down.
okay.
You understand?
Yeah, I was trying to understand, like we say Satchit Anand, soul is of this constitution.
No, but the Mayavadis personally dumb themselves down. They deny their individuality. They say Nirakar, Nirahankar, Nirrupa.
So,
You know.
okay. So basically that's their understanding, and
Yeah.
but they cannot change the truth. The truth is that
That's why they fall down and they get another chance.
okay.
And if they can see a Sankirtan party going down the street, that's their chance. They can join the Sankirtan and chant, or they come and take a Bhakti Viksha course. Right. Okay, so now today's lesson, we're going to study a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote to Jawaharlal Nehru. What does that mean, Jawaharlal? Does it mean anything?
Prime Minister of India.
No, I know that. Does his name mean anything? Jawaharlal. Lal in Hindi means like beautiful, right? Or
Lal means son, beta. That's
oh, son. Okay, so he's the son of Jawahar. No. So what does Jawahar mean? Okay. Anyway, on 20th of January 1952, Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter to Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the president of All India National Congress Working Committee. And he was in New Delhi. And Prabhupada knew him, actually. He used to shop in his store, in his pharmacy in Allahabad. Of course, we don't say Allahabad. We say Prayag, right? Allahabad is the Muslim name, but the real name of that city is Prayag. So, Nehru wrote an article in the AB Patrika, Allahabad edition, in December 1951. So Prabhupada writes, your article heading as "Let us be true to one another" attracted my attention, and I read it over and over again. This article contains the nucleus of future activities of the human society in the spiritual realm, and I have read in your statement about your deep thought on the onward march of human civilization. You have rightly said the following words in this connection, and "vis" means "vis," as we will see. And now he's quoting Nehru. Nehru wrote, "So we search for new ways, new aspects of the truth." Okay, so we will continue after the class.
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Yashomati Nandana Brajabaranagara Gokula Ranjana Kana. Yashamati Nandana Brajabaranagara Gokula Ranjana Kana. Gopi Paranadana Madana Manahara Gopi Paranadana Madana Manahara Kaliya Damana Vidana Kaliya Damana Vidana Amala Harinama Miya Vilasa Amala Harinama Miya Vilasa Vipina Purandhara Navina Nagara Bara Vipina Purandhara Navina Nagara Bara Vamshi Badana Subhasa Vamshi Badana Subhasa Prajajana Palana Surakula Nashana Prajajana Palana Surakula Nashana Nanda Godana Rakawala Nanda Godana Rakawala Govinda Madhava Navanita Daskara Govinda Madhava Navanita Daskara Sundarananda Gopala Sundarananda Gopala Jamuna Tata Chara Gopi Vasanahara Jamuna Tata Chara Gopi Vasanahara Rasarasika Kripa Maya Rasarasika Kripa Maya Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Nata Bara Shri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Nata Bara Bhakti Vinodarashaya Akati Vinodashaya Yashomati Nandana Brajabaranagara Bhakti Vinodarashaya Yashomati Nandana Brajabaranagara Gokula Ranjana Kana Namam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadeshatarine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Jaya Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Radhe Jaya Radha Nila Madhava Radha Nila Madhava Radhe Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Rama Sita Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Rama Sita Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Nitai Gaura Hariba 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 Nitai Gaura Hariba Nitai Gaura Hariba 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 Nitai Gaura Hariba Jai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol.
जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्रीमद एसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजाचार्य अष्टोत्तर शत श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की अनंत कोटि वैष्णवंद की नामाचार्य श्रीला हरिदास ठाकुर की इस्कॉन फाउंडर आचार्य श्रीला प्रभुपाद की प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवसादि गौर भक्त वृंद की श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरि गोवर्धन की राधा नीला माधव की श्री वृंदावन धाम की श्री मायापुर धाम की जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की गंगा माई की यमुना माई की तुलसी देवी की भक्ति देवी की श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की ऑल ग्लोरीज टू द assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki.
Our spiritual master, the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down at his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is perfection, fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him, ecstatic prema emanates. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the defender of the poor, and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Namo. Okay, so yes, Pranay.
Remember the homework assignments you gave?
Yes.
So, Puja Mataji told me that the yesterday's one was how to stop ourselves from doing nonsense.
Doing nonsense, yes.
Okay, so I have 3 assignments.
Okay, let's hear your
November 11th.
homework assignment, yeah.
Okay.
Read out loud.
The goal of life is to go back to Godhead. But you need to go back to Godhead, you need to taste the nectar of life. These steps...
The nectar of what?
Life.
Of life? You mean, does that mean like going to Disneyland or what? The nectar of what? Nectar of Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah. Consciousness, Krishna consciousness.
Krishna consciousness. These steps lead you to attain Krishna's love and do devotional service.
These steps?
Yeah.
What steps? You didn't explain any steps.
I mean, the nectar of Krishna conscious
Okay.
leads you to attain Krishna's love and do devotional service. In these classes, I have learned that only devotional service can get you back to Godhead.
Good.
In the Bhagavad Gita 11.54, Krishna tells Arjuna that only by undivided devotional service devotees can understand who I am really is. And that only in this way devotees can enter the mysteries of Krishna's understanding. In 11.55, Krishna says, from pure devotional service, one can be freed from contaminations and mental speculation. This concludes that devotional service is the key to opening the door of our true life.
Very good. Very, very good.
Second one is November 12th. The material conception of life is to
So this was the homework that we gave last week for yesterday. Yes, go ahead.
The material conception of life is to understand Krishna's spiritual position and do everything in our hands for the service of Krishna. We also have to listen to the Bhagavad Gita to understand the proper instructions and then follow them. The proper instructions are do devotional service purely, and doing that will really stop the cycle of birth and death. Also, the material consciousness of life means forgetfulness of Krishna, and we need to stop that. Once if we do this step, then in the Prabhupada Leela, it says that your material vision is now dead and vanishes. We also
What? Your material vision is what?
vanishes.
Say it in the microphone.
The material vision vanishes.
Vanishes, okay.
We also should not work like animals, sleeping, mating, and defending, but chanting.
Eating, you forgot eating.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, but the homework was to explain the material conception of life, right? Was that the homework? Okay. Oh, the material, well, you forgot to mention something. The material, unless I didn't hear it, and you can correct me if I didn't hear it. The material conception of life is to think that, is to, first of all, be ignorant of the existence of the eternal soul. And when you become ignorant or ignore the existence of the eternal soul, then you become attached to the body. And when you become attached to the body, you think that the purpose of life is sense gratification. And to get sense gratification, you need money. So therefore you should get money in any way possible, either legal or illegal, so that you can spend it on sense gratification. That's the material conception of life. And then when you die, everything is over. There's nothing after death. So therefore you should use all your energy in this life to get as much sense gratification as possible. That's the material conception of life. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to continue reading the letter of Jawaharlal Nehru. Actually, it's not his letter. It's the letter Prabhupada wrote him. But Prabhupada is quoting a paragraph from an article that he printed in the Allahabad edition of the Patrika. Do you ever hear that newspaper, Patrika, in India? Huh? Oh, okay. It's called A.B. Patrika, whatever that is. Allahabad edition. And this was written on the 30th of December, 1951, and Prabhupada's answering it on the 20th of January, 1952. So, this is 2017, so 17, 67, 65 years ago, this letter was written. So, Nehru writes, so we search for new ways, new aspects of the truth, more in harmony with our environment. And we question each other and debate and quarrel and evolve any number of isms and philosophies. As in the days of Socrates, we live in an age of questioning, but the questioning is not confined to a city like Athens, it is worldwide. Yeah, this is complete nonsense, but anyway, Prabhupada doesn't tell him right away it's nonsense, but he's going to tell him in a nice way that it's all nonsense what he wrote. So, anyway, now Prabhupada comments. There are two ways of answering such questions. What questions are we referring to? He's saying, we are searching for new ways, new aspects of the truth, more in harmony with our environment. And we question each other and debate and quarrel and evolve any number of isms and philosophies. Okay, so he's saying we're trying to find new aspects of the truth that's more in harmony with our environment. So Prabhupada says, there are two ways of answering such questions. I mean, the deductive way and the inductive way. Mortality of man is established by either of the above ways. In deductive way, we take it for granted from reliable source. Man is mortal. But in the inductive way, we approach the same truth by our poor reasoning of observation and experiment. By observation, we can see that Gandhi dies, Futilal dies, C.R. Das dies, Patel dies, and therefore we conclude that man dies or man is mortal. Then again, in the same deductive way, when we reason that man is mortal and find that Jawaharlal is a man, and thus conclude that Jawaharlal is mortal. Prabhupada's very witty, man. Very, very witty. So, anyway, so you understand, Pranay, the difference between deductive reasoning and inductive? A deductive way or inductive way of arriving at the truth? Or sort of. Can you sort of explain what your sort of understanding is? Oh, okay. Yeah. Sort of is not an answer. That means you don't really know. Yes?
Could that be called the logical way and the logical scientific way and then the emotional humanitarian?
Which one is emotional humanitarian and which one is logical scientific way? No, but we're talking about inductive and deductive reasoning.
Well, I'm just trying to think like inductive. I haven't heard that word very much. Inductive way, but deductive is like the scientific way. So, what is inductive?
Okay, I'm glad you asked this question. Inductive is the scientific way. Inductive means you have some hunch. So you begin to experiment. And you do a lot of experiments. And you're looking for some type of repetitive model in those experiments. So let's say you experiment by taking statistics on how many people died in a certain town. And you see that in a 20-year period, 10,000 people died in this town out of a population of 50,000. So then you say, well, there's a pattern. People are dying, but maybe I'll get a bigger survey. So you extend it another 10 years. And in the second 10 years, out of the 50,000 people, now another 18,000 died. Another 8,000 died. So now you have, in a 20-year period, 18,000 people died out of 50,000. So you say, aha, there's some pattern here. There's a lot of people dying. I'll extend it another 10 years. So after the next 10 years, you see that another 12,000 people died. So now 32,000 people died out of the 50,000 that you started with. You're not counting people that are being born. You're just counting people that died from a certain point. Yes?
Before you said 18,000, now you said 12,000.
More.
What?
More died.
So that brings it up to 30,000.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 30,000, yeah. Yeah. So you say, aha, there's a real model here, and there's a real tendency here. So you say, I'll extend another 10 years. So after another 10 years, another 12,000 people died from the original 50s. So now you get 42,000. You say, oh, I can draw a conclusion now. There's enough, I have enough of a sampling that I can conclude that everybody is going to die. That's called the inductive process, right? It's based on observation and experimentation. Yes?
Isn't deductive illogical?
Yes. Well, there's two types of deductive reasoning. There's the materialistic deductive reason, and there's the spiritual deductive reasoning. Krishna consciousness uses the spiritual deductive reasoning. It doesn't mess around with inductive reasoning or inductive process. So, the material inductive reasoning is you have a hunch. You think, I think man is mortal. Now, to see if your hunch is right, you would have to wait some time to see how many people in your family die, right? And then you see after about 50 years, everybody died in your family. You're the only one left. So then you can say, then what I thought is right. But actually what you would do is, you would reason. If my original hunch is true, then my granddad, who's 95, he should die. So you wait 2 years, he's dead. And you say, and then my auntie, who smokes a lot, and always is coughing, she should die. And then she dies. And then so far, like that, you're reasoning. This one should die, that one should die, that one. And then you say, okay, my original hunch is actually true. That's the deductive process.
Could you also say that just looking at history, nobody has lived forever, so everyone dies? Is that deductive?
Yeah. But that's a mix of inductive, deductive, right? But deductive is pure reasoning. You start with a hunch. This is material deductive. You start with a hunch, and then you reason what should happen if that hunch is true. That means Aunt Mary should die, Uncle Bill will die, this one will die, that one will die. And then in the end you say, okay, it's true.
So there's
because there's no contradictions to it in your reasoning.
So there's no way of looking at deductive reasoning in this case without waiting to see if people die?
No, you can deduct without waiting.
How?
But after some time, if there's some anomaly, if there's some contradiction of your reasoning, then there's a problem with the original hunch.
What would be the contradictory thing in this case?
Well, Jesus Christ would be a contradiction. He didn't die. Or he supposedly he died, but he resurrected again. So there would be some kind of contradiction.
Yes, we can just call him an outlier.
A what?
An outlier.
An outlier? What's an outlier?
An outlier is somebody who falls outside the normal parameters.
Yeah, exactly. The exception would put a big doubt to your original hunch. Right? Anyway, so Prabhupada is saying, there are two ways of answering such questions. What are the questions? That is, the attempt to find new aspects of the truth more in harmony with our environment. Wow, he was like an environmentalist way back then. Amazing. Mortality of man is established by either of the above ways. In the deductive way, we take it for granted from a reliable source, man is mortal. But in the inductive way, we approach the same truth by our poor reasoning of observation and experiment. So when Prabhupada says we take it for granted from a reliable source, he's talking about spiritual deductive reasoning now. The reliable source are the Vedas, and the Vedas are axiomatic truths, unless they specifically say that this section of the Vedas is allegorical. So otherwise, all the other statements of the Vedas are accepted as axiomatic truth. Axiomatic truth means you can't argue against it. Just like if you say, every child has a mother and father, you can't argue against it. Can you? Can you argue against that? Every child has a mother and father? No. So it's called axiomatic truth. So all the statements of the Vedas, except if it says that this is allegorical, are axiomatic truths. So that's why Prabhupada says, you take it for granted from a reliable source, man is mortal. But in an inductive way, we approach the same truth by poor reasoning of observation and experiment. By observation, we can see that Gandhi dies, Motilal does, etc., etc. Truth means absolute truth. Now he's really hammering. He's starting to hammer Nehru. Truth means absolute truth. Relative truth is conditional. And when the conditions fail, the relative truth disappears. But absolute truth does not exist on conditions. It is above all conditions. So when we speak of truth, we may take it for the absolute truth. And when we speak of approaching a truth by new ways, we may take it for granted that what we want to approach the truth by, we take it for granted what we want to approach the truth. No, it should be, we take it for granted that we want to approach the truth by the inductive way. So now he's like stuck it to him, What you're talking about is nonsense. It's not real truth. It's something relative that'll fall apart very quickly. Absolute truth in the Vedas is Satyam Param Dhimai, the summum bonum, the absolute supreme truth that cannot be questioned. And from this absolute truth, everything emanates. Janmadasya yata. Now Prabhupada is quoting Shastra. Right? This is Vedanta Sutra, the second aphorism. Janmadasya yata. The absolute truth is described in the Vedic literatures as sanatana, or eternal, and the philosophy or science which deals in such eternal subjects is described as sanatana dharma. So now he's completely bypassed Nehru totally, and he's talking about something that is irrefutable. The cultured Brahmin order of the society would declare that there is God or Brahman, and the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, who are less cultured than the Brahmins, would follow the latter, or the Brahmins, faithfully, call it blindly or otherwise. In other words, the genuine Brahmins were teaching others that there is God. And the other people in society, like the Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Sudras, they would accept faithfully. Even if you call it blind following, they would accept it. By such faithfully following the subordinate classes, by such faithfully following, it should be a comma there isn't, the subordinate classes would be able to save much time in the matter of arguing or reasoning for the existence of God at all, and still they would not be faithless. Well, basically he's saying, look, your method is a bunch of nonsense, because you're saying we have to find new aspects of the truth more in harmony with our environment. That's two things that are relative to each other, which means it's a nonsense. If two things are relative to each other, that means you're on shaky ground. And then Nehru says, and we question each other and debate and quarrel and evolve any number of isms and philosophies. Well, whatever ism and philosophy that they evolve from their debate on two relative aspects of the truth will be nonsense also. As in the days of Socrates, we live in an age of questioning, but the questioning is not confined to a city like Athens, it is worldwide. So your international questioning will lead to nonsense, basically, Prabhupada said, but in a very nice way.
So my understanding of what Srila Prabhupada basically said is that you can look at relative truth all you like, but absolute truth doesn't change, and you can't change that. So why not accept that?
He's leading to that, yes, definitely. Now, Prabhupada continues, in the old days, even a politician Brahmin like Chanakya would say that, Vidvattam cha nipattam cha naivatuya kadachana swadesa pujyate raja vidvar sarvatra pujyato. A really cultured, learned fellow is far above a politician. So, I mean, he's really poking it now, big time, to Nehru. Because a politician is honored by the votes of his countrymen, while a cultured and learned fellow is honored everywhere, all over the world. So we say that Ravindranatha and Gandhi were never dependent for the votes of their countrymen, but they were honored all over the world for their cultural contributions. So Prabhupada is poking him now, but with with references to something he knows. He's saying that Rabindranath Tagore, who in other places said he was a nonsense, Prabhupada said, and Gandhi, who in other places he also said he was a nonsense, are far above Nehru. This is what he's saying. He's way above you, Nehru, because you're considered Pandit Nehru by the votes of Vox Populus, of the people. But Gandhi and Rabindranath, they were honored all over the world for their cultural contribution. In other words, your contribution is just base politics, gross politics. These people actually gave some culture, right? And they were recognized by all people, because culture goes through all stratuses of society, right? The same Chanakya Pandit defined the standard of learning. So he's coming back to Chanakya Pandit, who was a politician, right? Not a politician who gets votes, but he was a political, let's say, politically savvy Brahmin. The same Chanakya Pandit defined the standard of learning. The standard of learning had to be testified by its result and not by the manner of university degrees. So Prabhupada is using very, I don't know, an English professor today might consider this not such good English, but he's saying the standard of learning had to be tested by the result and not by the manner of university degrees. So university degrees means you get your degree because you're good at speculation. But the Vedic principle is phalena parichyate. You test by the result. You see, you judge something by its result. Not because some PhD wrote an article. He said that one who looks upon all women, except one's married wife, as mothers, all others' wealth as pebbles on the street, and all living being as one's own self, is really a learned fellow. So now you're really poking it to Nehru, because Nehru was, I think, he was a womanizer. And anyway, Chanakya Pandit quotes a verse, Matravat Sarvabhutesu Lostravat Anyway, he said, a really educated person looks on all women except his wife as his mother, and vice versa. An educated woman looks at all men except her husband as his father. He or she looks on the wealth of others as pebbles in the street, not having any consequence at all in respect to their own life. They're not envious. And he looks at all living beings as his own self. This is the Indian way, or the Vedic way of the golden rule. Do unto others as you will have them do unto yourself. The Christian golden rule. He looks at all living beings as himself. Such a person is really a learned fellow. He never stressed on the point of standard of how many grammars, rhetorics, or other books of knowledge one might have gone through, or how many doctorates of different universities one might have been decorated with. In other words, Prabhupada saying, to be a learned fellow doesn't matter how many doctorates you have or how many books you read. It depends on how you see the world. And if you see every woman as your potential partner, and you're envious of other people's wealth, and you don't treat others respectfully, then you're not educated, even if you have 100 doctorates. That's basically what he's saying. At the present moment, we know very well that a few men look upon other women, beside one's married wife, as mothers. Very few men will look upon others' wealth as pebbles on the street, and very few men will try to behave with other living beings as one wants to be treated oneself. So basically saying most people are rascals. No, very few people have the correct vision of life. The sages of old age discovered it by spiritual culture, that man's energy should be utilized only for spiritual realization. Not to speak of Lord Krishna, who spoke the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita near about 5,000 years ago. We know that within a Vaishya family, let's see, within, okay, I must have a page missing. Let me see. Oh, no. Let's see. Within 2,000 years of human history, no sages, including Jesus Christ, Prophet Muhammad, Lord Buddha, Acharya Sankara, Madhya, Ramanuja, or even Lord Chaitanya, gave any importance to materialistic way of life. Material necessities were always subordinate to the spiritual realization. They saw it that the bread problem, clothing problem, and shelter problem are never solved by material activities, because in the law of nature, the elephant is given the whole jungle to eat, and the little ant is given a grain of sugar to solve their respective bread problems, and yet the animals remain hungry. It is not the question of a jungle or a grain of sugar that can solve our bread problems. In other words, he's saying, even if you have a whole jungle to eat, you'll still get hungry in the future. And if you have one grain of sand to eat, you'll still get hungry. In other words, even if you can eat 50 pounds of food one day, the next day you'll get hungry again. That's what he basically is saying. That doesn't solve the hunger problem just because you have food. Jai Shri Shri Radha Nilamadava Ki Jai Namaste. It is not the question of a jungle or a grain of sugar that can solve our bread problem, but it is the question of real food that can quench the hunger of the human being and revitalize him to proper life. Human being, therefore, should not be encouraged to satisfy his unsatiated hunger like the giant elephant or the little ant, but he should be trained up otherwise, which shall provide for his real food. In other words, the real food we need is spiritual knowledge. And we have to learn to curb our material lusts for eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and use that extra energy by curbing our material needs down to a minimum, using the extra energy and time we get to do our spiritual, get real spiritual education from the Vedic knowledge. The wonderful temples, the mosques, and the cathedrals of past century were built up to give the people the real food and were not built up by blind or unquestioning faith. They were built up on full faith and reasoning, which were based on the deductive process. In other words, we accept what the Bible says, we accept what the Quran says, we accept what the Vedas say, and we have full faith that God exists, and we are willing to sacrifice ourselves to build not football stadiums and giant schools of speculation, universities of speculation, but we build temples and mosques and churches so people can come and build their faith in God. The Vedas, the Bible or the Quran, would ask the human being to make proper use of his conserved energy in the transcendental service of God. And unsophisticated men in the old days would follow such instruction unhesitatingly for realizing the absolute truth. In other words, the priests, the imams, the Brahmins, they would teach the Vedas, the Bible or the Quran, and when they would ask their fellow men to use their energy in the service of God. And the common man in the old days would follow such instruction unhesitatingly for realizing absolute truth. Such temples, mosques were therefore centers of high culture to provide real food to the human consciousness. But in the present age, in the absence of such high culture, there is hardly any difference between the temples, mosques, and cathedrals and the high commercial buildings in a busy city. In other words, they've all become business centers rather than teaching genuine spiritual knowledge. If the culture is to be revived, it is quite possible to do it even in your parliamentary buildings in New Delhi. Yeah, in other words, he's implying you should chant Hare Krishna there instead of, passing new laws, just like you pass stool. In parliamentary buildings in Delhi or in the commercial buildings of New York. As the Socratesian ways of reasoning is not bound up within the walls of Athens, so also the Brahminical culture is not bound up within the walls of India. You can find out the 9 prescribed qualifications of a Brahmin, the 7 qualifications of Kshatriyas, and the 3 qualifications of Vaishya, and the 1 qualification of Sudra worldwide. You can therefore pick up Brahmins and other orders of society all over the world. Gandhiji, although born in a Vaishya family, possessed almost all the 9 qualifications of a Brahmin, and if possible, we can find out such Brahmin in other parts of the world. So Prabhupada is saying, you can find devotees and good people everywhere in the world. They're not just in India. One Brahmin Gandhi congressman is quite competent to guide its principle, whereas thousands other Sudra congressmen can only help it to break it up into pieces. In other words, he's saying, basically, he's implying, after Gandhi, all you others are a bunch of Sudras, and you're just ruining what Gandhi established, or wanted to establish. Thus, if we want to approach the Absolute Truth by new ways in harmony with present environment, we should try to be true to one another in the qualified way of Brahminical culture. In other words, you have to be genuine Brahmins if you're going to research the truth in your new environment. In other words, you're going to find the same truth by recognizing it even in the new environment. Only a dozen of real qualified Brahmins from all parts of the world should combine to guide the principles of the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, and the Sudras all over the world. So the Socratesian way of reasoning should be fully utilized because that makes the only difference between a human being and a beast. So what is Socrates' way? He questions things like, what is virtue? And he asks people, do you know what virtue is? And they say, yes. I say, can you explain it to me? And when they explain, it becomes clear that they don't know what virtue is. So then he says, well, Socrates would say then, well, would you now accept that you don't know what virtue is? And the person would have to say yes. And then Socrates would say, okay, then let's both of us combine our intelligence and try and figure out what real virtue is. This is why they condemned Socrates to death, because he went around Athens and showed that all the big guys, the philosophers, the so-called philosophers and politicians, they didn't know what they were talking about. And he sort of proved it to them in one-to-one discussions. So they wanted to get rid of him because he's dangerous. The Socratesian way of reasoning should be fully utilized because that makes the only difference between a human being and a beast. There is ample scope for this new way of approaching the absolute truth, and that will only solve the acute, distressing world problem. If there is a scarcity of such qualified Brahmins, which I honestly think there is, we should combine to evolve such Brahminical culture, not by blind faith, but by sound reasoning and questioning. But all the same, we must be sincere and thorough in our attempt. As a humble disciple of Om Vishnupad, Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami, I wish to remain always true to you and everyone, and if you sincerely be true to your forefather, I mean the Brahminical culture, you have the strength and capacity to save the world by presenting the Brahminical culture once again for consummation of the distressed world. In such acts of your broadness of mind, I am always at your service, awaiting your reply with interest. Yours sincerely, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Of course, Nehru never replied. So basically, with Prabhupada, in the end, he softens up and he's emphasizing Brahminical culture. Now, what is Brahminical culture? This is why he started ISKCON, to be able to train up genuine Brahmins. And what is a genuine Brahmin? Samadhamak tabaksucham shantirajam evacha jnanam vijnanam sahitam brahmakarma swabhavajam. Sama. They have equilibrium of mind. They're not disturbed by happiness or distress, by riches or poverty, by fame or infamy. They're not at all disturbed by duality in the material world. Sama. Dhamma means self-control. They control the senses. Vacha vegam, manasakroda vegam, jiva vegam, udarapasta vegam, etan vegam, yo vishadheta dirag, sarvam apimam pritibim sasasyat. They control the words, the mind, anger, the tongue, the stomach, and the genital. Therefore, they're able to go anywhere in the world and make disciples and train them properly. So, they're self-controlled, they have equilibrium of mind, dhammasama, tapa, they're austere, they're willing to forego sense gratification and use their energy for learning more and more about Krishna and then spreading that knowledge. So, dhammasama, tapas, socham, and they're clean physically and internally. Their heart is cleansed of material desires, of lust, anger, greed, envy, madness, and illusion. Or in other words, kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. These 6 debilitating emotional states that ruin people's ability to understand spiritual life. So dhammasama tapasucham shantir, and they're very tolerant and forgiving, and they're a pillar of tranquility. And then shantir arjavam, and they're honest, strictly honest. They'll speak the truth even to an enemy. And jnana, they have theoretical knowledge, and vijnana, they know how to use that theoretical knowledge in every practical instance or every practical situation. So jnana means you know the difference between the body and the soul. And vijnana means you know that the body and all material nature and all the souls and all incarnations of God and all the Vishnu incarnations in the world, they all come from Krishna. So that's vijnana. And therefore you're convinced that the goal of life is devotional service to the Lord, by which one can develop love. Okay, so we read this letter, and you can get this letter on the internet if you look up Prabhupada Letters, January 20th, 1952. If you want, maybe I can give you a copy of it now. And you should write what you understand what Prabhupada is saying in this letter to Nehru. Okay? So, Prabhupada, do you have the letter? Print it out and give it to whoever wants it. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Prabhupada wrote a letter to Gandhi also. That was never answered either. A brilliant letter. No, I've read that before. I'll read it again. Yeah. No questions. Thank you very much, and we'll continue. If you want to get a copy of the letter, he'll give it to you. Give me one copy too. Mine is mixed up. No, don't give it to me now. Give it to them, and you give it to me later. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Let's say you are a farmer. Let's say you work in